if they came here and all that. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. 1 second. So welcome to the stream, everybody.
Welcome. Welcome.
Hope everybody's having a fun night. Me, not so much. It's kind of cold. Kinda. Well, I can't wear socks right now, so having barefoot when I've been trying to cool this office down is not necessarily the funnest experience.
Right. So, Adam.
I
posted this a few weeks ago, but we haven't really gotten to it because of breaks and whatnot. But I really wanted to kind of hear your opinion on this, if you have one.
Okay.
Now, a while ago, you remember the Geek News feed. I posted the story about how Bandai Namco is restructuring its company a little.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you read all the whole thing, but this in particular figure would interest you, that Bandai Namco Holdings is labeling Animation Studio Sunrise as its quote-unquote IP creation unit.
I did see this.
The press release stated that function is more than just animation production and will also cooperate with other subsidiaries to produce IP that works well with the company's goods and services.
Yes, I read this. The only thing that kind of worries me is so they're labeling it the IP creation team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does that mean you no longer work on existing IPs?
Yeah, that's a good question.
This is why in a lot of cases, the problem is that the restructuring, while it did highlight a couple of things specifically, it was kind of vague in how some teams are going to get redistributed. If I remember correctly, there was a team that was going to get disbanded only to give them another more mysterious purpose.
Right.
Kind of thing. So at that point, it's oh, well, this isn't necessarily an announcement. This is just basically you covering your bases and showing that you need to restructure your money.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Sunrise as the new IP team, I don't know what that means, and frankly, I'm a little worried about that because I still want to see Gundam happen. If you take here's the thing: if Sunrise were to take a break from Gundam, let's just say this year, they take the next 3 years, don't do a Gundam series, I'd be okay with that, because the bottom line is that they have so many different series, and in some cases, the average Gundam fan has maybe seen 1 or 2 of them. All you have to do is provide the access, and they won't care. They'll think it's the most recent thing, and then they'll go to the Wikipedia and go, "Oh no, wow, okay, this is 2008."
Yeah,
that's the difference there. And so at that point, if they want to take a break from Gundam, I'm okay with that, but I would want Gundam to come back, after that 5 years or whatever, and see what ideas you can come up with then. And that's what I'm worried about when they said this is the IP creation team.
Yeah, it's definitely something to really be wondering about.
Yeah, so because I've heard this, I've heard IP creation numerous times in the gaming industry, and it's like a 50-50 thing. Sometimes it means good things, because then we'll get a new IP, say Horizon Zero Dawn, or I think Sly Cooper was actually developed under this kind of a deal, and they called it a secret project later. So you can have good things happen, but then, well, Blizzard had what was the original? So they had Project Titan first, and then it was Project something else, and then eventually that became Overwatch, or at least the team did. The team that created Overwatch was brought over from the Titan team. But the Titan team was working on a brand spanking new MMO that would have been futuristic, but maybe more fantasy-like. That's the problem. It's we don't know what Titan is. Nobody will actually answer the question because Blizzard doesn't want to talk about it. It's a failed project kind of thing. Seriously, go talk to a Blizzard dev on Nova Covert Ops, or not Nova Covert Ops, but StarCraft Ghost, and see how far you get.
Yeah.
Because they won't tell you. Mainly because there was no defined vision. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be. You can actually have failures that were because you took 20 guys and you thought they were your best and moved them over to a new project. I mean, Alex, your perfect example would be when all of the key players of Donkey Kong Country and Rare got moved over to a secret team that we knew nothing about that eventually got the name Project Dream, and then eventually came Banjo-Kazooie out of it. Kind of thing. That would be an example of a good one for you. I'm trying to think of a bad one for you. Actually, I think Nuts and Bolts would be it, because the project, I think it had a secretive title name, and they were looking to bring in a couple of new guys as well as some veterans of Rare that were still there. And then eventually you got Nuts and Bolts kind of thing. Or, Conquer Reloaded kind of deal. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
What were you bringing it up because I didn't bring it up? The only reason I didn't bring it up is because I remember that week we had plenty of stories, and there were listener requests that I wanted to get to. The other thing too is that a lot of the stuff was incredibly vague, and at that point I wanted like a more defined restructuring.
I know, but we've talked on some vague stuff before. I'm not mad. I wanted your opinion, especially regarding Sunrise, because you're such a big Gundam fan. I just really wanted to hear what you had to say. I know it's vague. It's usual corporate speak here. So,
well, it's corporate, it's PR, it's a lot of business talk that PR people are hoping will go over people's heads. But like, I hear restructuring and I can already tell you, okay, restructuring possibly means layoffs. Restructuring probably means team disbandings. Restructuring can also mean that you are taking yourself out of specific industries. Kind of thing, because I can't remember what was the team that's solely devoted to toy production now. In that article, there's one that's devoted solely to toy production.
Yeah, and I got it right here. So the company will establish a newly fully owned toy and hobby subsidiary called Bandai Spirits on February 15th. So that's probably happened now. On April 1st, the new subsidiary will absorb the figure and plastic model business from Bandai and the convenience store goods business from Bon Presto. The subsidiary has capital stock, 100 million yen.
Exactly. And so in a lot of cases, like you're putting a brand new team in there. What that tells me is basically, okay, there was at least one that you didn't trust in Bandai to be able to do that anymore. And so you want to restructure it so you can put people you do trust to be able to handle the toy making part of Bandai. The other thing out of that too is maybe with a lesser budget, because your figure sales aren't necessarily that high, so you want to cut their budget. That this is stuff that like a restructuring can mean. It's not all horribly bad news from what people are kind of gleaning from what I'm saying, because it can be positive to, I mean, Sega had to restructure, and now we have a smaller Sega that focuses more on mobile apps and brings in people to do things like Sonic Mania. Okay.
Yeah.
Do I consider that restructuring to be a bad idea or to be something bad? No. It's what Sega needed to do at that point in order to stay alive. So at that point, like sometimes restructuring can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be bad. And so my opinion is uncertainty.
Yeah.
Of it. I literally looked at Sunrise. I went, I could be seeing the end of Gundam, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of doubt it, because Gundam still does pretty well. It still makes money, doesn't it?
No, but if their efforts and focus is towards making new IPs, which Gundam is an established IP, that means that Gundam suffers. Because then at that point, they basically say, oh, yeah, all of our awesome new talent, the ones that were, or the ones that have given us success, they're moved over to the existing IPs. Oh, but I want to work on Gundam. Nope, you're moving over here. You're making the new Gundam kind of thing. And instead, like a bunch of people that are company men that have been there for 10 plus years, maybe have had some acknowledgments, maybe haven't, they get brought into the existing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that can mean.
Yeah.
Because they want their hip and up and coming blood working on the new stuff.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality of it. And I remember that week especially because I had 2 or 3 listener stories that people were pretty insistent that we cover. And one of them was, that wasn't the Logan Paul week. It was the week after, where we covered some YouTube stuff as well as a number of other things that just kind of overshadowed Bandai. Because, you know, I was looking for stuff to talk about that wasn't depressing.
No.
That's like people don't believe me. That's like my goal right now, is because we're in the doldrums of the beginning of a new year. And I'm really, really looking hard to find positive stories to be able to talk about. Okay. Sometimes the industry's catering to my wishes and sometimes not. But there you go. Yeah. So what I'm hoping is that after we start getting some of those announcements, we can get a little bit more of a defined restructuring of Bandai, and then we can talk about it then.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm also interested in what they're doing with their music division, Lantis, because Lantis does a lot of anime soundtracks.
That was another up in the air one too. Yeah.
So it does make you
basically what you can glean from that article, if you guys are paying attention to it, is we're not doing so well. We're having to restructure and move our money into the areas that are actually working instead of other stuff. And yeah, that's what that basically is saying for the moment. We don't know necessarily how much, aside from a few amounts, how the restructuring is affecting how Bandai does toys, how Bandai does music, how Bandai does a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality. Gee, and we even had stories this week that didn't make the cut, and I was really sad that they didn't, but oh well.
We want to do a lightning round?
Oh, we're gonna do one. Don't get me wrong on that one. Let's see. Now I already have received, so right now we can take care of a little bit of Dragon Shadow business. People have already been asking, did you guys see Black Panther? Yes.
Yes.
It's all here. Alex doesn't have it yet. We recorded it, and he's technically the one that edits the vlogs. So I got it to him, but then this week has been absurd in the fact that it's had horrible weather, horrible timing, horrible everything, and I have not been able to get this drive to him. I think my only opportunity was it was not on the drive yet, and my wife was not willing to wait. So at that point, it's like, okay, well, then I'll take care of it another day. So, so this is one that I kind of wish had made it. And, well, there's not enough to actually do anything with it. So yeah. There's a new movie coming on Cheetos.
On Cheetos?
Yes, a movie about the creator of Flamin' Hot Cheetos is in development. So this is a biopic about the guy who created Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
Okay, I mean, well, first I thought, oh my god, it's a movie about Cheetos, like the snack. Like, I don't know, I thought we were like having another emoji
I know, like
movie
when I read it, that's what happened when I first read it. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like Emoji Movie 2.0. And no, it's a biopic on the guy who made Flaming Hot Cheetos, because we all need to hear his story.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yes. So that almost made the stories tonight, but we did have some other urgent things to talk about. So sorry, guys. Also, if you're joining us brand spanking new, before we get started on the podcast, as soon as Romney gets here, I do have a big announcement to share with you guys. You guys get first pickings, and then at the end, we'll be making the announcement on places like Twitter and whatnot. So moving right along into a lot of this stuff. This one Blizzard fans actually wanted me to talk about is the fact that somehow mysteriously on some Battle.net apps, Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne has shown up. And a lot of people have speculated that that's going to be, since they did StarCraft Remastered last year, this year we'll get Warcraft 3 Remastered. I don't think so. I think they just did that for the tournaments. Because they're going to have a Warcraft 3 tournament that's, I think, the first in a couple of years. So that's awesome, actually. Labyrinth is returning to theaters for a limited time.
Oh, cool.
I think this is for the sequel. I think. The sequel's got to be coming soon.
Is there a sequel?
Yeah, there's a sequel. There's been a sequel in development for a while. Same thing with, well, There was one for the Dark Crystal, but that eventually warped into the Netflix series we're going to get, which I'm excited for, by the way. I love the Dark Crystal. And then also people wanted us to talk about Ghostbusters World. So do you know what this is, Alex?
Another spin-off, another game. What is it? I don't know.
It's Pokemon Go, but Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, that. I've been seeing that, but I haven't really looked into it. I don't care.
Yeah, and people already wanted to know, like, if we're going to play it. No.
No.
I still haven't gotten around to Pokemon Go. What makes you think I'm going to go to another augmented reality game? So we have that. Excuse me. And also, we are going to be, so if you guys missed the tweet, we are going to be covering the DICE Awards because the DICE Awards results came in, I believe, last night. So we're going to cover that briefly. Don't worry too much about that. Let's see. What was the other one that we had? Oh, somebody wanted us to talk about the episode 9 script. It apparently is complete. I'm not going to because I don't want to be spoiled. I know that sounds like a very petty reason, but I kind of don't want to be spoiled. So I know that the article that you guys sent to us is not going to spoil it, but it's like, okay, cool. Script's complete. I'll see it soon. Oh, and here's another one that made me laugh. So people want us to talk about Rush Hour 4.
Meh.
Yeah, it's happening, apparently. Says Chris Tucker. But it's happening. And the other one that just barely didn't make the agenda, and I'm not going to add it in because we have plenty of stuff to talk about, and that is people wanted our opinions on Anita Sarkeesian making an appearance at BioWare Edmonton. So this is the merged team that is all working on the newest game coming from BioWare called Anthem. That's going to be coming out, I believe it's either early or fall 2019. And Anita Sarkeesian didn't necessarily come. I don't think that she came to advise on it. She just basically came to host a little bit of a seminar at the BioWare headquarters. And apparently some employees were not happy about that and wanted to opt out and were kind of told they couldn't. So, yeah, thoughts on it before we get started?
I can't. She's still relevant. I mean, really, guys? Come on.
Well, apparently she's relevant enough that in our internal discussion, we actually kind of had a heated debate on Anita. It was fun though. I hadn't had a heated debate with my buddy Jefferson in a while. So
here's a little bonus thing I just saw. So Kara, which is Hideaki Anno's studio, and Dwango established company to fund indie games.
Good luck with that. I give it 5 years, and then I'm going to find out that Kara is now working with Tokyo RPG Factory. Why? Because they need the chops. So yeah. Romney, any thoughts on Anita?
Not really.
There's no relevance to it. That this is kind of why it didn't make it, guys, is because there's other crap going on in the world that we don't necessarily need to give a platform to Anita frickin' Sarkeesian. Okay, she's kind of had her moment in the spotlight, and frankly, after doing my homework a little bit more, I'm not necessarily willing to give her too much of a spotlight, since now I know she tends to utilize the spotlight for her own means. So I'm not really looking to give her that extra, what's the word I'm looking for? That extra spotlight, that extra acknowledgement. And the next thing that we're going to do before we get things started, give me a second here, is we have an amazing announcement to do before we start recording. And that is, guys, give me a second here. Boom. Is that showing up? Cool. Welcome, everybody, to the GNRO Discord server. So you have received an invite link. You're more than welcome to join us. It's mainly going to be a Discord server based around our content. So there are going to be specific kind of groups to be able to handle Romney's content, Alex's content, my content, all that stuff. So you guys can have that all in one place. as well as we've been talking about this for a while, that we might actually branch outside of YouTube. Discord is one of the places that we've actually considered doing that. Maybe even hosting a private podcast for you guys, like a bonus podcast that only you guys can enjoy, kind of thing. So there you go. There is the Discord invite link. We'll also be putting that out after the podcast on Twitter and the Facebooks and all that fun stuff. The only thing that we ask is that if you come in, please conduct yourself accordingly. If you start shit, you're going to get banned, and we don't want to ban you. We want to welcome you. So keep that in mind, and let me know when everybody is ready.
Ready.
My SD card's still formatting. For some reason, it's taking longer than it usually does.
That's cool.
Oh,
The other thing I'm also going to warn people in advance is that it isn't snowing now, at least the time that I actually looked at it, but we've been having some pretty nasty weather locally. So just in case we have some nasty weather, we might actually cut off the cameras and things like that just to save on bandwidth, just so that we can give you guys the recording, if that's what we need. If it just gets too nasty, we might have to call things a little bit early, and I'm really hoping that we don't have to do that. But let's go ahead and get things started if you guys are ready to go.
all right. Sound speed.
Okay. Oh, hold on. And now I'm not ready. Jiminy Christmas. General. No, I want audio hardware. What the hell? You set things up in advance and then it says, nope, you can't do that. Well, screw you too, sweetheart. Okay, is this working? Yay, that's working. Okay. Alex, you ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, cool. 3, 2, 1. Let me get the chat up and everything like that. So, Alex, if you could handle the Discord server stuff while we're doing the podcast, that would be awesome.
Okay, no.
Just if people have questions for what the link is, you guys can let them know. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another awesome episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, February 23rd, 2018. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far. For me, not so much. I almost died twice. I'm not even going to lie about that one. Basically, it's been very nasty weather-wise, and one day when I had an appointment, I couldn't avoid things and lost control of my car like twice, and both of them were almost I'm going to call them death-defying situations, because one of them, I actually had my car completely sideways, and you know it's not a good indicator when you look at the car behind you, and they're not having much good in control either, so they could probably T-bone you. And then the other one was my car decided to spin a cookie on a highway, and I literally went from the far right lane of that highway to the far left, completely inverted at that point, and conveniently right next to the median. I have no problem telling you guys I didn't want to drive after that. The entire day and probably even half into the day after that. I did not want to drive. So I hope everybody had an awesome week compared to me, especially my fellow panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow awesome guys in general. And let's go ahead and start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, of Rhapsody in Cinema, of Monster Clash, of whatever he decides to film this given day of the week. Romney, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, the week itself was a bit rough because, well, much like how you were having issues driving, the weather kind of made things difficult for me in general, both getting to work and leaving on time. And so the week's had a lot of lows, but luckily I was able to take today off, especially as I had to process the fact that I'm now 26.
By the way, everybody send happy birthday to, what is it, Romney Reviews on Twitter? Send your happy birthday wishes over to Romney Reviews on Twitter. Or maybe you can join him on the Discord server and you can wish him happy birthday there.
Yeah, whichever works. Just literally woke up and realized, I'm 26.
Don't you love those birthdays? It's like, I am a year older. Except for me now because like you guys are making me feel old. And so like when I wake up, it's like, I'm a year older. That's really sad.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt at first, but I guess it was a good thing that the snow fell and I couldn't leave my house, because it basically made me think, okay, well, there's nothing else to do, so I just spent the day relaxing.
Probably for the best. And then we're also being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, who has decided to graciously join us from out of the shadows and of the darkness and of the warm embrace of Black Rose behind him. Alex, how are you doing? Especially considering you're probably doing pretty well, I think, since you're the only one on the podcast with 4-wheel drive.
4-wheel drive doesn't mean shit in this film. And I just think, because I too have had my own driving mishaps and adventures, because twice I began swerving, and once early Monday morning, did a little spin out, not terrible. I'm okay, didn't hit anyone.
Yeah.
But today, though, on my way home from work, coming on the off ramp, for whatever reason, was not paved compared to the rest of the freeway, began to slide and skid a little. I wasn't going too fast, so I had enough stopping distance, but not nearly enough because I came yay close. T-boning the car to the side. It probably would have been
a hair's breadth.
It was a really scary close call to T-boning the car in the other lane, but thankfully, again, I was going slow enough that I had just enough time to stop, and even if I didn't, it probably wouldn't have been terrible.
So what we're basically saying is if you guys want to fund things enough through our Patreon to make sure that we can actually get some kind of, artificial help when it comes to peeing and pooping your pants, we probably need it with storms like these happening all the time. Mm-hmm. I actually looked over. So like when I had the swerve on the highway, I just so happened to have my older brother with me, and him and me were just like, what the hell just happened? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, did you pee your pants? Yeah, probably. Okay, cool. Let's move on. So yeah, anyway, it's been a nasty week, and the weather is just not helping us out tonight. But thankfully, we have some stories to talk about, some good, some bad. I'm trying very hard to avoid the bad stories, at least for now, so that we can recover and we don't have to worry about Logan Paul incidents happening. So let's go ahead and get into the top story of the night, at least for the tech portion of the evening. And that is going to be, actually, as a starting question, how many people are or have seen or are aware of the movie King of Kong?
I remember I saw it when I was in high school, oddly enough, so I am aware of that and the people involved.
All right, and then Alex, I believe you haven't, have you?
No, I have. I've seen it.
You've seen it, okay. Well, then we're going to be dealing with some familiar subject matter, as we're going to be delving into two members of the Twin Galaxies database. So if people remember from the movie, Twin Galaxies is the organization that works now with Guinness World Records on video game high scores. So like the world record breaking high scores on a game. Okay, so we have two guilty candidates here, and I don't know what's actually going on Romney's camera. So if people can actually hear that, then I don't know what to tell you. But we have two, I'm going to go ahead and say offenders. I was going to try and lead into the story, but we have two stories of interest involving the Twin Galaxies database. And this has apparently been going on, and listeners have only notified us recently, but this has been going on since November, with the start of. Now, our current story actually involves one of them, but there's one that also needs to be recognized because he's part of the other story. So we need to go into one Todd Rogers first. Todd Rogers, if you don't actually know who he is, he was notorious on the Twin Galaxies database, basically called the King of Atari, roughly. He had a lot of high scores, a lot of world record scores that were set on the Atari 2600. So he had stuff for Dragster. He had stuff for, I think, even like Atari variants of like Galaga and Pac-Man and stuff like that. So he had a lot of those scores, but we just recently disputed those scores. And through that dispute, we've had a bad situation happen for Todd Rogers. Mainly is a few of the judges as well as other fans have actually extrapolated some of his scores and determined them to be impossible. In particular, the two that get brought up, I'm not remembering one of the games, but one of them is Atari Dragster, where his actual time that's on there, a programmer literally took the game apart math-wise and proved that his score was not possible. It was literally impossible to get the time that he had within it. And of course, there isn't a video with his record-breaking dragster, which is, here's the thing. You can either have like a ref observe the score happening, or you can send in a video and then the judges at Twin Galaxies will determine whether or not it's a world record kind of thing. So with his, it was actually a individual referee that confirmed the scores, which just so happened to be a buddy of his, and I'm not remembering his name off the top of my head. I think it's Rory Peterson. The only problem is that the ref in question is serving a prison sentence for sexual molestation charges. And it gets worse. So Todd Rogers has also come out and admitted, after being kind of harassed about it, that he did actually abuse his access into the Twin Galaxies database. So he actually could have, he says he went in there once and he modified some scores. And now we have this ongoing pattern of, if you look into Todd Rogers' scores, you have two major factors that come up. One, the score that he has is way above the second place score. Like we're talking, there's one that was set at like 300,000 and his score was 96 million. Kind of a little implausible, especially with the game that was brought up. But then you also notice that the other problem is it was verified by a referee. Guess who it was? It was his buddy who is now in prison. So because of these actions and because of the admission that Todd Rogers has, is that he has been banned permanently from the Twin Galaxies database, his scores removed, and all of the respective second placers have been moved up. Now, people might be wondering, why the hell did I bring up Todd Rogers? Because he's relevant to the other person that just got unearthed for having some issues in Twin Galaxies, and that is one Billy Mitchell. People might remember from the King of Kong as the original holder of the world's record for Donkey Kong, as well as Pac-Man. Not anymore. So currently his Donkey Kong record is in 6th place. But judges were not done there, because they're now disputing his score of 1,062,000. And so again, this is one of those things where the score is there and his verification was by referee. Only problem is that this actually does have videotape to it. And through some science and math that other people were actually able to do, in particular, one person that presents the evidence is YouTuber Apollo Legend. We were able to determine that the footage that he's getting Donkey Kong, or at least he recorded it in, was not of an arcade machine. It actually turns out to be in MAME, an arcade emulator. And people are like, this is a bad thing, because Twin Galaxies database actually determines actual machine scores and MAME scores to be separate. And therefore, if his looks like MAME, it should not be in the machine database scores, which it is. Obviously, Billy has been approached on this and has neglected to comment for the most part. He actually did do 2 podcasts, one which is cringeworthy to the absolute max, and I regret ever actually watching it, which is the East Side Dave show, where he didn't even get asked. This guy was so pro Billy Mitchell, he didn't even ask him about MAME. And the other one, which is escaping, I think it's Epic Media, the other one that actually did ask him about it, he flat out denied that he had ever done things on MAME, except for the fact that there are some things out of his control where he might have actually been playing MAME. See how Romney looks confused on the camera, everybody? That's how confused everybody else is from that statement. Oh, but wait, it gets better. So Billy Mitchell, if you do like a little bit more homework into the situation of Twin Galaxies, you'll also notice that on most of the financial records, Billy Mitchell is very heavily financially involved in the organization and likes to throw his weight around, because the second new judges questioned his score, he is literally quoted as saying he will make things bad for Twin Galaxies if you press forward with this. And what gets even better, you remember how I said his score was verified by referee? Todd Rogers. who has since been banned from the Twin Galaxies database for life, is his verification. And so now there's a big question as to whether or not Billy Mitchell's records, including his Pac-Man score, because we also have evidence saying that no, he wasn't the first one to ever get a perfect game in Pac-Man. They all might be removed, and the King of Kong will finally be removed from whatever place in the mountain he was actually on. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and start things off with the opinions of the panel. Starting with Alex, what is your take on this whole situation, especially since you were kind of one of the people that found this story and submitted it?
Right. Well, I guess we should be clear. I didn't find it. I didn't do any detective journalism here. I just found from other sources. But yeah, I'm the one who brought it to the Geek News attention here. But yeah, I guess it doesn't really surprise me. It's been a few years since I've seen King of Kong. Not terribly long, but I did watch it on YouTube like a couple of years ago. And I always thought something was really weird about Mitchell.
Yeah.
The way he just like, okay, he didn't want to come in. He didn't want to defend his title. He kind of came off as a bit of a standoff.
And when he did, he was more than willing to submit videotapes instead of actual. Which, by the way, the tape in King of Kong, that's the disputed evidence that we have. That's how they were actually able to link to him using MAME, because of the way that MAME actually loads up the screens.
Yeah, and considering Mitchell has made a brand out of himself pretty much between like businesses and he owns and like his hot sauce.
Yeah, he's got a restaurant. He's got some distribution for hot sauce. He's got a number of things going for him.
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me. He's been very, very skittish about keeping out of the sort of the limelight, but keeping the brand alive, right? Never wanting to actually go in and sort of quote unquote protect his title, but at the same time it always looked suspicious to me the way Mitchell just went about things. And at this point I think the evidence seems kind of clear. I think it's just trash the scores, trash them all, let's wipe the entire slate clean and let's start fresh. Let some new competitors through, I don't know, independent sourcing like Guinness or whatever, or whoever keeps tracks of records now, just trash everything clean and start anew.
Well, I will say this. The unfortunate part of King of Kong is also, and Romney may agree with me or not, but King of Kong didn't just put proverbial egg on Billy Mitchell's face. I would actually say that it also did it for Twin Galaxies, because we actually got to see a lot of the problems that Twin Galaxies is now suffering for. When they were in their earliest stages where everybody was buddy and everybody was friends with one another. And in some cases for a business that can work, this was definitely not one of them, especially when you are trying to say you hold a world record on a video game and your buddy is the one that verified it. You know, one of the things that actually bugged me about King of Kong is that they actually were able to produce evidence saying that Billy Mitchell, the current holder of the Donkey Kong world record, was one of the refs responsible for Steve Wiebe's score. You'd think that if you were the guy who is holding the current world record, you'd be as far away from that as possible. No, Billy wasn't.
Yeah, that's not the only thing. I mean, again, the other aspects the documentary goes into is more or less how Billy has sent goons after other people with disputed scores. I mean, most famously, there was one player who was edging in on Billy Mitchell's score in Missile Command, and basically sent.
That's actually one of the things that gets brought up in King of Kong. That's the damning evidence.
Yeah, he sends. Yeah, well, yeah, and basically with Billy Mitchell, he sent goons after this guy, and they trashed his Missile Command machine to try to see if it had been tampered with. And I use that in air quotes because mostly this is audio, but it's very much one of those, yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. And I remember even seeing in that documentary how one of the refs who actually did see Steve Wiebe's attempt was a little annoyed that Steve Wiebe made the attempt and surpassed the score, and then Billy Mitchell sent in a tape. And that was one thing I liked, is that the ref was just like, okay, this was kind of dumb, but hey, Steve Wiebe, send in a tape anytime because you're good people. And so, yeah. Honestly, the notion that Billy Mitchell probably used MAME and for people who don't know, MAME stands for Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, and probably even used an altered playthrough because, again, MAME allows you to record gameplay footage, but stitch it together so that way you can edit out all the screw-ups. The notion, it doesn't really surprise me. It doesn't sound something that's far-fetched. It does sound like something Billy Mitchell would probably do, knowing Billy Mitchell. I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh, trash all of the scores like Alex is suggesting, but given that Todd Rogers has been banned from it, it very much raises the question of, okay, let's make sure we actually scrutinize a lot of these scores now that it's been called into question, put all the evidence that you have under that level of scrutiny to determine whether the footage or whether the playthroughs were legitimate or not.
Yes. It's one of those things where if Billy is as innocent as he claims out to be, all you have to do is either do it publicly or you need to answer some of the questions that are coming up around both your videotape as well as any other scores that you've submitted, kind of thing. You actually need to be able to claim that. The other thing too that I think needs to happen here, just for Twin Galaxy's sake, is Billy needs to be off the dang donor list. Okay. If he already has all this stuff, then this is technically Billy's company, and I don't feel comfortable with. And in fact, there's actually been some dispute as to whether or not Guinness is kind of done with Twin Galaxies over a lot of this controversy. It hasn't officially happened yet, but there has been some talk that Guinness is probably ready to drop Twin Galaxies as the people who are going to be covering the world records for video games. So in that case, that might actually be the best thing to handle there, because I don't know if Twin Galaxies overall can be saved. I mean, you got to see a lot of the problems within that organization. Look, Walter Day's a good guy and all that, but he made some bad decisions, and now we're dealing with those ghosts after he's long since retired from Twin Galaxies. And
there's no power pill for Twin Galaxies to swallow here.
No, there is no power pellet. There is no hammer. There is no way out of this. There is no extra pattern that you can learn to get out of this situation. You must go to game over and start again. Would you like to put in a new credit, please? So did I bring in enough gaming references there?
Well, yeah, pretty much. At least enough for an Adam Sandler movie.
All right. Yeah. This is my Adam Sandler voice because I am great to hear your voices in person. And there you go. Now we've had that. But yeah, final thoughts on this one, because there's not too much I can add to this. Like I literally have. So I've watched King of Kong, and I watched another one that happened later called Chasing Ghosts, which goes into the history of people like Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell. And that doesn't help them that much either. It very much paints Twin Galaxies in a very difficult to praise light. And therefore, like, you can see in those documentaries, like, the problems with Twin Galaxies right off the bat, and, you know, bless the employees that have tried to make it work as best as they could. In fact, Billy's friend and Todd's friend, Robert Merchek, who is like the main judge. In fact, he's in King of Kong because he saw the Steve Wiebe video first. He actually approached both of these guys and said, let's clarify this stuff. Submit a new videotape. We'll watch it live. We'll do all that stuff. Or you can do it publicly. Come out to, I think it's called Fun Spot. Come out to the arcade and break these records so that people can see them right off the bat. Neither one of them listened to Merchek. Neither one of them. So, you know, bless those who are trying to actually fix this. It's not fixable. This might actually be the end of Twin Galaxies. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you might have to start up a whole new organization and decide like how best to run it, which in this case, maybe not having Billy Mitchell's money would be a good thing.
Yeah. And whether or not it's a new organization that starts up on its own, or whether or not Guinness just decides to start their own branch that verifies this sort of thing, remains to be
my guess. Like, they may bring in people like Merchek and say, like, we need some people to run this. And you've seemed to be like an ethical person, but it's more likely that Guinness, to cover their butts, are just going to say, nope, we have a video games division now.
Yeah, I mean, they keep trying to put out those Gamer Edition Book of World Records that aren't always that great. So, I mean, they're already trying, so they may as well fully commit.
I will say this, and I hope this sticks, because I've seen a campaign kind of start on YouTube to stop this. And that is, can we please stop calling Billy Mitchell the father of esports? First of all, that term makes absolutely no sense. He's not the father of esports. If you want to call him the father of competitive gaming, and even then I think that's a stretch, he's done no esports.
I mean, if you really want to get technical, if you're thinking like esports in terms of electronic sports, what about Kasparov? Or what about the various chess masters that have gone up against computers?
Yeah. Like, this is one of those things that I've never gotten, and almost every video and article that I've looked into has had this, is Billy Mitchell is also known as the father of esports. How?
Yeah. Honestly, and plus that really, that's a very like loose definition of esports when you really think about it. I mean, honestly, that really raises the question of, okay, well, where do we actually draw the line of what is considered the first esport? And then it raises the question of what is esports? I mean, do we consider, okay, what if maybe someone hosted a Doom tournament back in the day? Does that count? Or that's a whole separate can of worms. But yeah, I wouldn't say, even if including competitions to get world records in gaming, I would not consider that esports. I would consider that as a separate thing entirely.
Exactly. And back to the whole father of esports thing. Again, if you want to call him the father of competitive gaming, I'm kind of okay with that, but I actually would be more okay with giving that title to Walter Day, the creator of Twin Galaxies. It's not that he held, like, because I don't think he actually held a record. He brought in kids that all claimed to hold records. And the funniest thing too, I'll get into that in a second, but I think Walter Day ought to be there because he was the guy who said, let's put these things on a scoreboard. Let's actually compete with these scores. I actually think he's kind of the father of competitive gaming, not Billy.
Even looking at the Wikipedia article discussing esports, it's not Billy Mitchell that's credited. Like, it is actually Walter Day's name is what comes up. But there's one event prior to that occurred on October 19th in 1972 at Stanford University, and it was basically an LAN competition for the game Space War, arguably the very first video game / computer game ever created. So yeah, and then followed by Space Invaders Championship in 1980. And so yeah, even the Wikipedia article, and yes, I know Wikipedia can be edited, it's clear that Billy Mitchell didn't start Jack.
No, he didn't start Jack, but yet he's the guy who gets credit for it because he's the one that appears on the talk shows. And that's another thing that I really hope happens is, like, Billy is just not, you've noticed that he's not on the notable talk shows anymore. He doesn't really show up. I think the last thing that he did was for an anniversary for Pac-Man, but that was kind of a closed off event. So I really hope that the thing that we get out of this is, like, let's not give this guy any more acknowledgement, especially if it looks like he achieved his scores through seedy means, kind of thing. That's the biggest issue that I have here. And that's not even all the evidence that I presented here. I'll probably put a link in the Apollo Legends video of every piece of evidence basically saying that Billy Mitchell doesn't, his score should not be valid for this.
Yeah, looking at this article, and oddly enough, it brings up the whole... It's funny that we're talking about this during the Pyeongchang Olympics, given that people want esports to become part of the Olympics. Yeah. So if they decide to add esports to the 2024 Olympics in Paris, I get the feeling it would be someone like Walter Day that they would bring in to kind of be the commentator.
Well, not Walter. Walter's long since retired.
Well, Point being, they would bring in people who actually know how to comment on that sort of thing, or if they were doing some sort of a retrospective, he would be the guy that would probably want to interview, not Billy.
Yeah, at the very most that I don't know Walter's health. I mean, like the Chasing Ghosts documentary kind of paints him as being really fragile at that point. So I don't know where his health is actually standing, but if he was actually going to show up, I don't see him being administrative. I see him as being a guy who's sitting there waving for everybody,
like sitting there waving, maybe being some sort of commentator, like not quite in the case of he's constantly covering the event, but maybe just someone that they bring in for like one specific event to give his opinion. So and
for the record, so I actually just barely got this via a friend of ours on Twitter. We're not knocking Walter Day, guys. We really aren't. Walter Day's a good guy and he had a good idea in mind. It's just unfortunate that the kids around this idea, because all of these are the same kids he tried to feature in Time Magazine, the kids around him are the ones that kind of screwed up Twin Galaxies. Walter had a good idea. We're not knocking Walter. He's a good guy. I don't necessarily hate the guy. There were points in King of Kong where I felt like he was kind of mischaracterized, but not really. And a lot of people will also bring up that, like, yes, King of Kong is kind of Hollywoodified and all that stuff, but I still think that if you look at that, you can already see the inner workings of Twin Galaxies working against them, kind of thing. So yeah, we're not knocking Walter Day in this regard. He had the best of intentions. It's just unfortunately the people around him didn't, kind of thing. So that's the sad reality. Final thoughts, Alex, before we move into the next story?
No, I really don't have anything more to add.
Yeah. But, and I actually should point this out because there's actually been discussion. There probably will be a King of Kong too.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know what events they're going to cover, but I wonder if some of this stuff is going to get brought up. Like the director did confirm there will be a King of Kong too.
Well,
so,
yeah, if there is going to be one, it's going to obviously be brought up. I mean,
yeah,
like thinking in terms of a documentary, what nice narrative hook can you get of, oh, are the scores in dispute? Like that, there's your narrative right there.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I would actually like to see happen is, so since then, Steve has actually talked to Billy Mitchell. He in the movie, he's only ever talked to like Steve Sanders, who, by the way, defend your best friend there. I'm sorry, but like, I get that you guys met through cheating, but now he's the superior cheater, Steve. So at that point, like, the movie paints like Billy had no contact with Steve at all. It was instead friends that had contact with him. So at that point, I do know that they've had conversations since then. And when Steve gets asked publicly, he's like, oh yeah, it was great. We were just shooting the breeze and all that. But I have heard in private interviews, he knocks Billy pretty royally. And I would actually like to see this in King of Kong too. So, all right, moving on into the next story, and this one is an unusual one. It's one of those stories, guys, that I never thought I'd have to report on, but I have to give proper kudos. Alex, one of your change.org petitions, it actually looks like it worked.
Well, I've had
a round of applause, Alex.
Okay, well, actually, I've had a different change.org petition make some real change. I never signed this change.org petition.
But I'm saying you brought it to our attention.
Yeah.
So people might be wondering what the hell are they talking about? So in light of recent events with EA and Star Wars, it actually looks like, and there was actually a petition to get Disney to remove EA from the Star Wars license. And it looks like you might get your wish. Disney is actually in the process of looking at 2 new games publishers and developers for brand new games. And they've actually, we don't have this from an official Disney rep, but there's actually been a little bit of industry talk saying that Disney is not pleased with where EA is. From what I can tell, they consider both Battlefront games to be failures. And the fact that all of the other games that were coming out around them have since been either canceled or basically made into ports into other Battlefront games. So Disney's not pleased, and they're actually looking to hand this property over. What makes me happy, though, is, in some cases, we've talked about AAA and big budgets and all that stuff. The people they're actually looking into are going to be more medium-sized studios. Something along the lines of, I want to say Platinum Games, but Platinum is actually probably smaller than what they're looking at. They're looking for more like a AA studio where they can do a lesser budget and do more of a fixed kind of narrative Star Wars game and see what some of these development studios come up with. Do we have some candidates? We know that they've reached out to companies like Activision and Ubisoft, but we also know that they kind of want to go for something a little bit smaller than that. And maybe the promise from Ubisoft and Activision is to put them into specific teams, like maybe have Infinity Ward do a shooter or something like that. But that way it's not completely the responsibility of the AAA brand to have that licensing. But yeah, it looks like Alex might have actually gotten his wish. And I'm not saying that this isn't the wish of the rest of the panel, but wow, I'm actually kind of excited. Romney has a look of it. Just wait, here comes the butt.
Yeah, because again, a lot of people may think, yay, it's going away from EA. Yeah, but keep in mind who they're considering. I mean, Activision, they may be able to do something good with it. Ubisoft, you're just substituting Origin for Uplay. So
Yeah, the problem with Ubisoft is that while I do think that Ubisoft has some good competent teams with them, those teams are the lower end of the pecking order, so to speak. So at that point, if they were going to give Star Wars to anybody, it would be what they consider to be their AAA teams. So probably the team that works on Assassin's Creed, probably the team that works on things like Just Dance, and oh my gosh, I just barely had a thought. Just Dance Star Wars Edition. Romney, talk for me. I need to get this thought out of my head.
Well, the thing is, it already exists. We know what it looks like. So at the very least, it's not going to be anything we haven't seen before because it exists.
It does, but it's like, no, I don't want that again. I don't want, like, here's the thing. I know that there's a few people, like, there's a cult following on YouTube for it just because it's stupid and it's silly. I'm not one of them. I'm not. I don't want to Just Dance. But yeah, Ubisoft has the question, but I would actually dare say Activision has that question too. Because again, big AAA studio, what are they going to do? Are they going to hand it over to Infinity Ward, where we'll get yet another shooter based in the Star Wars universe? Or maybe we could actually get some of the other smaller teams within Activision to take it on, but more than likely, no, it's going to be handed to one of their COD teams.
Yeah, and again, it especially depends on whether they want to go the shooter route or if they want to go kind of the action-adventure route to try to compete with the type of titles that Ubisoft cranks out year after year with things. So it's very much, okay, are they going to try to basically replicate Battlefront, or are they going to try to create action-adventure games to compete with the Assassin's Creeds and others? Like, for example, the route they may go, and it could be a reason why Ubisoft is in consideration, is maybe creating a Star Wars sandbox game that's either set during... Yeah, and that's something I know people would want to play, but again, may sound good on paper, but it's the execution. And honestly, looking at this, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, when you look at it from Disney's perspective, EA got the rights, but they haven't delivered the profits. And so naturally, if you partnered with a company and they're not giving you the profits, what do? You take away your toys and you give them to someone who's actually going to do something constructive with them.
Which to me is actually a good move from Disney. Okay, like this was a cool experiment. You did it for a couple of games. Most of them got shut down because it looks like EA is doing some massive restructuring. And Disney has looked at this and seen the writing on the wall and went, okay, well, maybe these guys aren't the people to handle this license. The games that they've done so far have either been controversial or they've been less than satisfactory to our goals. So at that point, let's give another studio a go. Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember like all of the Activision teams and see if there's maybe, because I mean, here's the thing, like with Activision, some people are going to bring up, you could hand it over to Blizzard. Yeah, I don't see Blizzard picking it up. Blizzard's already busy with a number of other things. I think they would literally look at it and go, let's add in Star Wars skins to Overwatch. Let's add in Star Wars stuff to our other existing properties that are already, we have the team set in place.
Yeah. Plus, it's also another thing to consider. Oh, a Star Wars MMO. We have it. It's called The Old Republic.
And speaking of, so somebody actually did ask via Twitter, does this affect The Old Republic? To my knowledge, no, it doesn't, because BioWare does have the license to it, but it's not necessarily that like Disney's overseeing it. I think Disney gets a cut, but it's one of those things that I don't think EA and Disney are going to have issues over. I think BioWare does okay with it, so they'll probably let that keep running. But any new games is where exactly Disney's going to have issues with, and they're going to want to try out some new people.
Yeah, and looking at this and looking at the studios that are under the Activision Blizzard banner, there could be a lot of different directions they could take this. I mean, they could give it, off the top of my head, looking, because you've mentioned Infinity Ward, they could also give it to Radical Entertainment, which worked on some action and open world titles. I mean, Radical, they were acquired from Vivendi Games, and I know one of the games they worked on was Simpsons Hit and Run, which was a GTA clone. And so that could be something we could see in the Star Wars universe. So they dealt
with IPs before, or they dealt with movie IPs.
Yeah, and then there's also Treyarch, which has also done its fair share of action games as well. And so there's a lot of...
Isn't Treyarch one of the 3 COD teams, though?
Let's find out.
Because it's Infinity Ward, it's Treyarch, and there's one other. And I think Treyarch is the ones that do... The World at War ones.
Yes, but they also have experience working on the Spider-Man games as well. So they do have
Oh, yeah,
experience
there you
working
go.
with IPs. They also worked on the video game version of Quantum of Solace, the James Bond film.
So yeah,
So
this would probably be the studio team that
yeah,
gets it.
and so there are a number of teams here that have experience working with high-profile IPs. I mean, Treyarch has a lot of movie tie-ins under their belt with Minority Report, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. So that could probably be a division that they may want to hand it off to, thinking, okay, you guys have worked on movie-based tie-ins. Let's see what you can do with it. Another possibility that's been floated both in the article and in the comments of the article is maybe the idea of Disney no longer giving it to one company, but simply letting companies approach them and saying, hey, we want to make a Star Wars game, no longer having it be centralized, which honestly may be a better option.
This has been so from following this article, I actually have seen PR reps on Twitter and things like that ask of how would you feel if, like, say, they used Visceral Studios as a example, even though it doesn't exist anymore. But, like, you know, if they wanted to continue their Star Wars game, but under your banner, would you be okay with it? And you get mixed responses from the PR reps. I think they're trying to save face and say, well, that would be great, but we don't know necessarily if that's the direction that we want to go, kind of thing. The one thing that I've also heard is, again, they're looking for lesser budget teams to be able to approach to see if maybe they can make things on a lesser budget. And this would probably be the thing I would say to do. Make these games on a lesser budget, and that way, if it's not profitable, it doesn't hurt you that much.
Yeah, and that's honestly probably the big takeaway a lot of game studios need to learn nowadays is stop sinking so much money into it. One studio that people in the comments of the article were referring to keep throwing around is Bethesda. And I can see Bethesda, maybe if they gave it to id, like if they gave it to id Software and did like a very like short, like first-person shooter a la Doom, but set in Star Wars, maybe. But
yeah,
again,
maybe. I mean, maybe you could hand it over to Arcane Studios. I'm not saying that they did a horrible job with Prey, but they, you know, if you're looking for an open world kind of thing, I think Arcane would be the studio that you do within Bethesda, aside from Bethesda Softworks. And that Softworks, I have an issue with because, unfortunately, guys, you're never going to sell me on this. Softworks still has the reputation of getting a game out that's buggy as hell. And as far as I'm concerned, if you are considered AAA, no bugs whatsoever. Because that kills the experience for me. This is why in a lot of cases I'm not an Elder Scrolls fan and I'm not a Fallout fan, is because this is a well-known trope of them. And unlike other studios like, say, Blizzard or BioWare, Bethesda kind of takes their time to fix these things. Whereas these guys go, oh, patch fix in by like 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks. So that's my only issue if it actually fell to Bethesda, but it doesn't look like even Bethesda's approached them on the matter. Alex, your viewpoint on this so far, because this has actually been a discussion topic we've had for a while, especially since you've also brought up articles of like, since, you know, these budgets are getting huge, should we be increasing game price? Like, what do you think is the ideal scenario that comes out of this?
Yeah, Romney said it because the other comments have also been saying it. My ideal would be to either Disney themselves or Lucasfilm or reestablish LucasArts just as sort of a holder.
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Oh, you're hurting my feelings here, man.
Yeah.
No, LucasArts is not coming back at him. No, it's not coming back.
So, yeah, but basically, rather than sink all your resources or give the license to one large company, just have it be an open license that anyone can apply for, have a quality standard so that it can either, you can say, okay, this is now canon within our Disney universe. Okay, this is now Legends canon here. So it's like people can pick and choose which canon they want to play from and pick from or develop from in this case. And you give a lot more leeway to a lot more developers. You don't have to worry too much about one giant bloated AAA game sinking your whole brand and having to be back to square one. Disney, I don't know why they are in video games. They clearly don't know how to do it.
Well, they're not. That's why in a lot of cases they go to these other studios. Like they used to have their own development studios. They've since closed it. They don't want to do this at all. So that's why they went out to EA and said, "You guys do the video games. You go make us money."
Yeah, I get, and that's kind of my point. It's like they don't seem to have they don't have the slightest clue to make video games themselves. They don't have the slightest clue how to actually work in the industry. It's like Disney, you just don't have a clue what you're doing here. I think this is not an area you should be in, but of course they see the sweet cash, so of course they want to be in it. So that's unavoidable. So that's just why I think it's just better to let the Lucasfilm division actually be a sort of a licensee.
Can I float an idea here too? Does it have to be canon?
No, I even said they can say, okay, do you want to develop a game from our universe or from the Legends universe? And so developer A can say, we want to make something in the universe.
Because I think the only thing that Star Wars gamers are going to care about is like if it's a good story.
Yeah. And so anyway, let's say you got two developers here. It's like, okay, developer A, we want to make something for the Star Wars universe that ties into the next Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Then Lucasfilm can assert the quality control in regards to story and say, okay, here's how the story is pacing out. Here's what you can tell. Here's what you can't tell. Here's how much you can show, blah, blah, blah. Then company B can say, okay, we just want to make something out of the old Legends canon, the old Legends universe. Then Lucasfilm can say, okay, go crazy with it. Just, you can't reference anything to our canon as a condition.
Or maybe they can do it, but they can actually state for the record, this is not based in Star Wars canon, so you cannot take it as anything. And instead, maybe they give like an interesting twist on a character that nobody actually expected. And so at that point, that's a whole new story that can be told about the character. Like, I'm just going to throw this out for the sake of example. You base a game around Finn, except Finn's a badass. It's not canon, obviously. But at that point, like, you could actually do a pretty good game because, if Last Jedi has taught us anything, is that we all kind of wish Finn was more badass.
Yeah, although I hate to kind of be the skeptic here, it's a little too optimistic to assume that they would let developers pick and choose between the Legends and the current canon.
Yeah.
Given how unified Disney wants the brand to be, they probably would lock developers into the new canon. Because that's what they've been doing with the comics and the novels and all the new spin-off media that we've been getting.
Yeah, I know they would. This is like my ideal versus the reality here. I'm just saying this is what my ideal would be. Yeah. We all know Disney won't do it, but that's how I would do it if I were in charge.
Pretty much, yeah. So final thoughts before we move on into this one, because unfortunately, until we actually get some solid evidence and all that, which we'll probably get from a Disney press conference, we don't know. Like, the sky's the limit here, but at least we can all cheer that, yay, EA's no longer in charge of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's capitalism at work, people. When one business decision doesn't work out, you don't force more money in. You basically cut your losses and find someone else to work with.
But one company that shouldn't get it, and this is a perfect segue into our next story, Konami. And the main reason being is that, that game, Metal Gear Survive, that so many people are so excited for? Oh, look, boys and girls, more microtransactions.
Perhaps one of the most egregious microtransactions ever.
This one is a doozy. And frankly, from a company, like, can we all be in agreement? We totally saw this coming from Konami.
I don't know. I don't think I even saw them being this unimaginably stupid.
I'll admit, I kind of saw EA doing this first.
I just knew this was going to be a thing at some point. It was very much like a case of pick one bad developer or another. Someone is going to try to pull this.
So, people may have heard about Metal Gear Survive. This is going to be the first ever game in the Metal Gear series without Hideo Kojima at some kind of observing or anything like that. Even Rising had some kind of input from Kojima on the matter. This is the first one where he has since left the company. He's off doing his own thing, which we're all really excited for. Death Stranding looks awesome. In fact, we'd rather be talking about Death Stranding than talking about this. Metal Gear Survive has added in a new microtransaction feature that, again, I'm really surprised EA didn't do this first. So if you like creating multiple characters within a game so that you can have multiple different experiences within that game, sucks to be you for Metal Gear Survive, because your first one is free. If you want another one, it costs $10. $10 for a save file, for an avatar. Just, I have no words. Better use your in a lot of cases, I actually kind of agree with some of the YouTube commentary here. Better watch your saves, because if you try to do independent ones, do those count? And therefore $5. Yeah, this is a thing now, guys. Microtransactions have gotten into the administrative part of the game. Just, Romney, thoughts?
What can be said? It's Konami being Konami. I mean, can anyone really say they were honestly surprised that Konami would try to get away with this, just given Konami's track record? So I looked at this and I'm just like, I had no reaction aside from the fact of, if not this, they would have tried something else, because it is Konami.
Yeah, that's the sad reality here, is that you couldn't see any other company aside from maybe EA doing this. And I kind of hope this is the death knell for Metal Gear Survive. Although that does... okay, that I get the caveat that comes with that. Is if Survive doesn't work, Konami's just going to get rid of Metal Gear. It'll become another pachinko machine like all the rest. Kind of thing. That's the sad reality here. But if this is what you're going to do, you deserve to fail.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, they've already made the pachinko machine, so it's not even like, it'll just become another one. No, it exists. They made a Snake Eater pachinko machine. So it's literally, at this point, it's very much clear that I think even Konami is aware of the fact of, yeah, we don't even have faith in our own product and ourselves, given that they were trying to transition almost entirely into mobile gaming before the backlash surrounding Kojima. And so, honestly, just looking at this is just, I'm not surprised. What more can be said aside from fuck Konami?
And we actually do have our buddy Aldo Gomez joining us in the chat. Is it more egregious than the other dozens of MMOs that pull this crap after paying for a game and paying monthly? Okay, I get the argument there, and I could actually counter that argument with, that's paying for servers and that's paying for a number of other things. And yes, should it be cheaper? Yeah, probably at this point. Yeah, it probably should be cheaper. Especially since server costs are actually getting cheaper. But at the same time, guys, I'm not paying $10 in WoW for a character slot. Konami is basically saying, no, you gotta pay for that. I will be an MMO apologist. Oh, not really, because there are actually bad MMOs out there. So I'd have to lump them in there too. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, we didn't think microtransactions would get this far. Well, guess what, people? It did. It did, and the sad reality is that I think this is still in testing stages, but I've actually seen some people on commentary saying, yeah, I'd pay it. I'd pay $10 to get a new character.
Yeah.
Because it's Metal Gear.
No.
No.
It's not Metal Gear. Anyone who tries to say, it's Metal Gear.
Metal Gear Hunger Games. This is it's not even that either. It's like Metal Gear meets Evolve, or
it's basically Metal Gear Zombie
Apocalypse.
Mode. It's just Metal Gear Zombie Mode, except it also wants to be kind of sort of Monster Hunter, sort of.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, is it like Monster Hunter? I don't know. I don't know about that one, because it's more trying to be like the Zombie Apocalypse model.
Yeah, but you do mine resources from the zombies that you kill, so...
Oh, that's true. Okay, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, that kind of works. Dang it. Alex, your thoughts on this? I mean, and by the way, but when you actually give your thoughts, you're going to have to pay me $5 because you're giving an opinion.
Right.
It's a new model that I'm trying.
Well, Wow, okay. So, Konami, how are you still in business? I don't know. It's just
It's very
what
simple. They pretty much own Japan.
yeah. Again, I'm going back to my previous theories that they have Yakuza ties, and that considering they do have a lot of investment in patchy slots, probably so. There's probably a lot of organized crime with them. You know,
You know what's really sad
probably
is like,
was, you know,
like 5 years ago, I'd be arguing with Alex and saying that can't possibly be true. And now 5 years later, I'm like, yeah, I might be right.
you know, that's why the last Kojima Metal Gear game took so long, you know, because they kept saying, "Yo, Kojima, I know you're working on your Metal Gear game, but I got a little assignment for you down by the docks."
I like that he's brought in some Yakuza Brooklyn rage. So yeah, this is ridiculous, Konami. Seriously, if you guys don't want to be in the games industry anymore, just tell us that you don't want to be in the games industry and go off and make your pachinko machines. I think at this point, the fan base that you had would just be fine with calling it good now. If they were still fans after this.
Yeah, I mean, considering that it worked well for SNK for a while, where that was all they did for a number of years before they came back with King of Fighters, that honestly may be the best thing to do at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. I think at this point, granted, I don't know the numbers yet. I don't even think, I think Metal Gear Survive is set for a week or two from now. But like a lot of the stuff that I've seen has been like beta kind of testing.
Really? Because I thought it came out this week.
Was it? Okay. It might have been. But yeah, so like, if this is any indicator of where this is going and the model that Konami is looking to adopt, by Konami. I don't even want to be that guy either. And I don't think Romney does either. Like we want to think the best because this is the company that owns Castlevania. This is the company that owns Metal Gear. This is the company that owns a lot of really cool IPs and properties. We're just never going to see anything from again.
Nope.
So, well, at least I can live vicariously through the Shadow Blazer as he sees these for the first time and can see why they were awesome, but then look at it and go, oh, and then we can hold each other while crying because no other new games will come out.
So sad.
Romney can join with us. Final thoughts before we move on into this one, because the stupidity is just, it's out there in the open, people. There's nothing really we can add on this one aside from Konami, you're a bunch of idiots. Oh, and by the way, good luck trying to get healthcare in Japan because I understand they have their hands in that too.
Yeah. Again, it's literally can be summarized with a hashtag "fuck Konami."
Yeah, pretty much. I'm almost ready to reach out to our buddy Marta, who has already done our brand new art. So, some people actually were asking about that. That is MartAnimE, and her link is below. I'm thoroughly convinced we need her to come up with some t-shirt images so that we could start printing them. And one of them is F Konami kind of thing.
Well, problem is we probably get flack from Jim Sterling since, well, he kind of not monopolized, but yeah, there'd be a bit of a dispute as to who owns the hashtag.
Could we at least do like a Mickey Mouse Hit Squad?
See, that we own.
By Disney.
Can we at least do Sassy Senoritas?
That we can do.
That we can do. All right. Marta, you've heard. Now we need this. We need this on paper. Damn it. So moving on into the next story, which is an addition, rather. I was looking for a word on it because we have the results of the DICE Awards for 2018, and I guess I've got some crow to eat because Alex has called it once again. It looks like Breath of the Wild won clean at the DICE Awards. So Game of the Year went to Breath of the Wild, as well as Outstanding Achievement in Game Design, Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction. See, I'm trying to get all of the ones together, and they're not. I think that's actually it for Breath of the Wild.
Well, it also got Adventure Game of the Year.
Adventure Game of the Year. That's the other one that I knew I was forgetting. The one that I'm at least happy that Horizon Zero Dawn got was Outstanding Achievement in Story, because I do agree that actually was an awesome thing for them to get. They also did get Outstanding Technical Achievement, so congrats to them. But in other categories, we actually have PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds getting Action Game of the Year. We have Cuphead getting Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition. Mario
Animation.
Odyssey. What?
Like Cuphead also got the Outstanding Achievement in Animation as well.
In art direction also. So animation, art direction, and original music composition. Sound design went to Mario Odyssey. I'm kind of surprised they didn't get original music composition because some of the music in Odyssey is actually really good. But
well, the competition was stiff between that and Cuphead. So
the other ones that we do have are, let's see, there was one for Hellblade. Outstanding Achievement in Character went to Senua for Hellblade Senua Sacrifice. We also do have Fighting Game of the Year went to Injustice 2. Family Game of the Year went to Snipper Clips. Racing Game of the Year went to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Here's another one that threw people off again. Is Strategy Simulation Game of the Year went to Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. It beat out XCOM twice.
Well, there is an argument to be made, and it was even something that one of the XCOM developers even pointed out. It was basically a more accessible strategy game in the style of XCOM that kids and families could play it, whereas XCOM, the learning curve is a tad steep, and so that probably is what gave Mario and Rabbids the edge.
Yeah, so we do have that one for the strategy simulation. We also have Sports Game of the Year going to FIFA 18. Role-playing Game of the Year went to Nier Automata. Shout out to Marta, because I know she's a Nier fan, and she actually she kind of lost in our 100 subscriber video because unfortunately she wasn't the one that got picked. The only one that I don't know on this one, and probably because it's probably VR only, is Lone Echo and Echo Arena, which got Immersive Reality Game of the Year and Immersive Reality Technical Achievement. The DICE Sprite Award went to Snipper Clips, and the Handheld Game of the Year went to my boy, or rather my girl, Metroid Samus Returns. Mobile Game of the Year went to your boy, Romney, with Fire Emblem Heroes. Mm-hmm. And, well, Alex already won against all of us because Breath of the Wild was his boy. Sorry.
That's like the only one I played out of this. You know, I'm a little disappointed. Hat in Time completely snubbed across the board. I just finished that game really good. Also, but I gotta say, at least in score, I think A Hat in Time probably deserved an award there because I've listened to the music. It's really good.
I've heard some weird debate on Hat in Time because some people are actually saying it might be bled over to 2018 because of the late console release. I don't know this for fact, but it would be interesting to see Hat in Time considered a 2018 game.
Yeah, possibly because it came out. Possibly because it did come out like November of last year, so it might have missed the cutoff.
Its PC release came out in October, but then its console release, which is where at least a majority of the people I've talked to have played it, that didn't come out until December, like mid-December. So I don't know. I don't know if it technically qualifies or if it would be a 2017 game. If it is, then that's sad. But yeah, it's one of those things where I have heard rumblings of like maybe it should be considered in 2018. I don't know. We'll find that out. But Romney, final thoughts on the DICE Awards?
Well, I mean, it looks like they at least gave the awards, at least most of them, to games that actually earned their merits. It's not nearly as disappointing and as rampant with nepotism as a certain other award show that we don't really care about. But
cough Game Awards, cough.
Actually, my knock was against the Oscars. So.
Yeah, I kind of figured
This is true because I'm already kind of wondering, like, is Alex even going to watch the Oscars this year?
He's
probably just because it's fun to live tweet during them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but yeah, looking at this, it's a case of it looks like at least they actually did a good job of making sure ones that actually achieved things earned said achievements. I'm kind of in the same camp as Alex, where I didn't really play that many. Aside from the one winner that I played on here is sadly Fire Emblem Heroes, because Mr. Fire Emblem fan here. And although it's a bit disappointing that Shadows of Valentia didn't win, well, Metroid at least is a worthy rival for it to have lost to.
I will admit the one thing that's kind of shocked me overall has been the strategy one, because we've now had 2 award ceremonies where... Oh, I have a home invader. My bad. So yeah, the one that's been kind of shocking is the strategy one, because, where XCOM has been doing strategy for a long time. You can hear me over the cow. I don't even know if that's coming up on my mic, but I'm hearing like cow noises behind me.
We can't hear it, but
yeah. So I've got a little home intruder. So come here, you. Come here. Okay. All right. But yeah, that was the one because XCOM has been the king of strategy for a long time, and for it to get dethroned by a merger of Nintendo and Ubisoft is the weirdest thing.
Yeah, but again, as I mentioned, there's at least some merit to it because, and again, this was an XCOM developer saying this, where when he was trying to find a way to convey what it was that he was working on to his kids, Mario and Rabbids basically allowed him to show what types of games he was working on with using characters they actually recognized. Because let's face it, XCOM, barring the learning curve, it is not a very kid-friendly game. And so that probably is what gave Mario and Rabbids the edge, is that it seems a bit more accessible to the average player than something like XCOM.
Okay, then at that point, I would give you that. Because, I actually like the first XCOM. I haven't played XCOM 2, and I didn't add it to my review list because I'm not finished with the original story. But, I mean, if XCOM, which is a complicated franchise, even in its new form, it is still kind of complicated. Mario Rabbids, I have to give that to you because the review isn't out yet, but it's going to be out soon. And I will say that the open accessibility is a thing that does help the Mario Rabbids equation.
Mm-hmm. And it's an important thing with a lot of games because if you're not getting new players picking it up, it's not going to do as well. I mean, yeah, a diehard fan base can support a franchise, but not for very long.
Yeah. So final thoughts before we move on into the next story, which this is actually going to wrap up the tech portion of the evening. Let's go ahead and go into our top story for the entertainment portion of the evening, which was a shock that literally happened either today or yesterday. I want to say today because this is when I actually started seeing the story going out, but it's official. One of the things we were praising about DC was that they still were hiring on directors like Joss Whedon. Well, we were speaking too soon because Joss Whedon has stepped down from Batgirl. And the weirdest part about this is that it's not because of internal politics or anything like that. Joss actually admits that he wasn't able to get the job done. He wasn't able to figure out the premise of a movie for Batgirl. And he actually, I'm looking for the quote in the article, but he actually does say, I don't think he, like something along the lines of, do you give people points for failure?
Batgirl is such an exciting project, and Warner's DC such collaborative and supportive partners.
Yeah, there you
go. It took me months to realize I really didn't have a story.
Yeah, so at that point, like the main reason that he's leaving is not because of controversial stuff. It's because he failed. He wasn't able to put a story to motion for the Batgirl movie, and therefore he's exiting. I have no words for this. In fact, I'm going to leave it to you guys because I've got a little one to take care of. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if he says he's bowing out gracefully, but we've seen kind of DC and Warner apply the spin of this before, as we just talked last week, where Zack Snyder said he was leaving on his own accord because of the tragedy in his family. Then it turns out, no, he wasn't. He was really ousted before that, and they just jumped on that as sort of a staging point to kind of muddle the waters and kind of keep things quiet and keep the drama down.
Yeah, plus another thing to consider is the overall direction of where Batman is as established in the DC cinematic universe, and, Batman is not in a very good place in the DCCU, and you can't really make a Batgirl movie without having established a strong baseline for Batman, the foundation of the entire Bat family. It's very much you're trying to make a film focused on what was initially a sidekick without having the main hero's footing being firmly established. And that is probably, I'm willing to give Whedon the benefit of the doubt in saying that he probably did leave because he couldn't figure out a story, and it's not helped that Batman's kind of not really established in the DCCU. I mean, yeah, we had Batman v Superman and Justice League, but we haven't really had any standalone Batman films. They currently don't even have a unified voice for the DCCU, so naturally that's going to cause problems because if you haven't really established Batman all that well, how can you possibly establish Batgirl in that same vein?
Yeah, here's the major problem with Batgirl that I'm seeing, and thankfully Romney's kind of pointed it out. You don't have a Batman movie that establishes that there could be other members of the Bat family. And in fact, we're already hearing rumblings here and there, because we always do, of like Ben Affleck's dissatisfied. He might actually leave the project. He might actually want to direct the project instead, and all that stuff. But the bottom line is, you don't have an established Batman in this universe aside from Justice League, which isn't a whole lot to go off of. We need an actual Batman movie, one that kind of hints at Barbara Gordon, Stephanie Blake, I think is the other one. Stephanie Brown, like one of those to be an established Batgirl. And so maybe this is the problem that Joss had, is that there isn't an established Bat universe here, for lack of a better term. There is no established Bat canon. I'm just making this sound like the Adam West show. I really am. There's nothing for him to work with, and therefore you can't. And the other problem is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Batman or Batgirl kind of shares a lot of the same villains, with a few exceptions here and there. So at that point, like, what do? Do you give her Harley? Or like, let's just say for the sake of argument, a Ben Affleck movie has the Joker as the villain. What, do you give her Harley because the Joker's in prison?
Or ultimately, do you try to give her some sort of a lesser known villain? Yeah. And again, which one? That's the other question. The other question that has to be asked is Ben going to be involved? Is there going to be a Batman that she's either fighting with or she's working together with? There's a lot of questions here that maybe Joss wasn't able to answer, and therefore said, you know what, I'd love to do this, but I can't establish this, especially considering there is no foundation yet. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, there could have been something that also raises the question with Batgirl as a movie. Well, do we have it as an origin? Is this her donning the cowl for the first time and fighting alongside Batman, or is she already established in a previous film? And there's things you can do it either way. I mean, especially given that they allude to the fact that a previous Robin, they haven't stated which one, most likely Jason Todd, all things considered, but they've alluded that a Robin was killed in the line of duty. So is this Batgirl trying to become Batman's sidekick, but Batman being reluctant because he already had a Robin get killed? Or is this something going back further in the past where there was a Robin and a Batgirl? And again, there's just too many unanswered questions, too many things that DC just hasn't ironed out. And granted, that could open a lot of interesting opportunities for a movie, but that can also be very frustrating when things are kind of in flux as to who the heck is running this shit show.
It's in one of those cases where, you know, we're talking a lot about that there is no foundation. It actually would have been a cool idea for DC to look at Joss and say, we have no foundation here. Why don't you help us set up the foundation? Like, let's put you on Batman. Let's let you kind of establish the canon that you want there. And maybe just like, you know, Joss is only in charge of the Batman stuff. So Batman movies, if there's going to be Batgirl, if you want to do things like, I don't know, Red Hood or stuff like that, you could do that, but it would all be under the watchful eye of Joss Whedon. The only problem with that idea is I don't see Joss taking that. He already had a major production responsibility with the first two Avengers movies, and he wasn't even responsible for the movies that came before that. Like, he was helping to build them, but he still, like, Avengers was his baby. He wasn't doing Captain America kind of thing. So in a lot of cases, you know, that should be the idea that we go with. I don't see Joss signing on to that.
Yeah, plus he's made it clear that he wants to go back to doing original stuff, which is why he stepped away. Because if he wanted to continue with superheroes, he would have stayed with Marvel. But he's made it clear he wants to do his own thing. And so, honestly, it just doesn't surprise me because DC and Warner Brothers still need to get all their ducks in a row, especially in the wake of the ouster of Zack Snyder.
Somebody just sent me, just remake Buffy, damn it. Guys, again, he's looking for new stuff to do. He's already done Buffy technically twice.
Yeah. So. And before people comment, no, he's not going to do any more Firefly. Even Nathan Fillion has stated, no, we're all too old now. We can't do any more Firefly.
Well, and actually, I don't know if you guys have actually seen this, but like when he answers questions about Firefly now at cons, usually the unfortunate outlaw star question gets brought up, and I kind of get the impression from him he is sick of that question.
I bet it gets asked it a lot, so I can
Yeah, so
imagine.
like he's sick of that, and look, I get your viewpoint, guys, that he might actually be responsible, or that he might have actually done the things you're claiming he did, but he's made his testimony pretty clear, and I can actually say, like, despite similarities, there are enough differences to define the two.
Yeah, plus it's not like Outlaw Star is exactly the most original anime out there. It's
No.
almost again like, oh, but space western. Yeah, there's a whole
If they're not saying that if they're not saying Firefly ripped off Outlaw Star, they're saying Outlaw Star ripped off Cowboy Bebop, which again is not founded.
Yeah, point being, there's been many times where, I mean, when you consider just the idea of the dragon, and you have dragon stories in Europe and dragon stories in China that both existed before the two cultures ever interacted with one another, this is probably the same sort of thing. It's just two different creative teams happen to have very similar ideas. It's just a coincidence.
Coincidence or aliens?
I can't use the X-Files music. You know that, right?
It wasn't an X-Files reference, it was Ancient Aliens.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were doing a Duchovny right there. It's like,
well, to be fair, the guy that's often pictured in the meme may as well be David Duchovny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the meme, so at that point, I thought you were just doing Duchovny. So I was like, okay. Well, final thoughts before we move on into the next one, because while this is sad, like I kind of agree with Joss. Like, if you can't do anything with it, then you shouldn't be getting you should be on the payroll.
Yeah,
I at least want to give Joss some credit. He graciously left. He admitted he failed.
Yeah, I still want to see a Batgirl film because I think it is if we're not getting a standalone Batman movie anytime soon, the least you can do with all these proposed side story sort of films that are set in the Batman universe. I mean, we're likely getting Suicide Squad 2. We're talking about like 2 different Joker movies now. The very least you can do is maybe start to kind of begin building not only your foundation.
We have the issue of like, so we have 2 Joker movies, and it looks like 2 separate people are going to be playing Joker. Mm-hmm. The same thing is going to happen with Black Adam, where we're going to get him in Shazam, but we're also going to get a Black Adam movie. That's supposedly the one that Dwayne Johnson's going to be cast in. So like, maybe we ought to figure out a lot of these problems first before we establish this.
Especially considering that DC may no longer be going for the unified cinematic universe, but instead kind of treating these films as one-offs. And that raises the next question of, okay, is the Batgirl movie going to be part of the main DCCU, or is it going to be treated the same as an Elseworlds tale?
And honestly, the only way that I could see what you want, Alex, happening, and this is a long shot in and of itself, but you know what? Joss doing it would be amazing too, is Birds of Prey. Like if they actually try to do an adaptation film for Birds of Prey. The only issue of that is that's another superhero team up kind of thing. People, I'm sure Warner Brothers as well as DC would want to build up to that. And Joss just doesn't want that responsibility. But that would actually be a way to do a Batgirl, but also putting her together with like Black Canary and Huntress.
Yeah. Well, with or without Joss Whedon, it's sort of just, it's the character I'm interested in seeing. Yeah. And I think this is kind of it's another way I feel like you can keep building on the Batman movie. Because God knows when we're going to see another standalone Batman movie. We can't seem to get a straight answer out of anyone. And the movie keeps going through so much hell right now. So in the meantime, maybe this is sort of an interesting way to kind of work to it, is by maybe starting on other facets of the Batman universe, other parts of Gotham with characters like Batgirl, and seeing what she can contribute, even whether you want to do an origin story, maybe even do something like 89 Batman, where she's already established but mysterious, and you kind of hint at her backstory.
Yeah, what you're describing is Batwoman.
Well,
more than anything.
I mean, to build on Alex's example, if they were trying to find a way to kind of retool by exploring the other facets of the Batman universe, maybe explore the idea of the impact of Batman as a myth on Gotham. So instead of trying to do the whole, okay, well, here's Batman's backstory, maybe just kind of do the case of, okay, how do these different aspects within Gotham City view Batman as a symbol, as a force to be reckoned with? And that would allow for maybe even exploring, okay, who was Batman to Batgirl? And you don't even necessarily have to have Batman in the story, but kind of thinking, okay, how did Barbara Gordon, Like, how did Barbara Gordon view Batman? How did Dick Grayson as Nightwing view Batman? Kind of explore kind of the impact that the symbol that is Batman had on Gotham City, both for good and for ill. Because, I mean, you could also just as easily have the film focused solely on Harvey Dent, both before and after his turn into Two-Face of, okay, well, how did Harvey Dent react to the idea of Batman, both before he became Two-Face and then sometime after, going from being an agent of the law to becoming a notorious villain and part of the rogues gallery. So something like that I can see DC doing as a means of basically trying to get back to basics, but still kind of establishing, okay, in this DC universe, Batman is still established as a force to be reckoned with.
I will say this at the very least. It looks like for a portion of this, DC just needs to set their bat house in order. So
Indeed.
That's the way that things need to go. So moving on into the next story that we have tonight. And this one, I'm contractually and legally obligated to make sure that Romney has a pillow nearby before I actually start bringing it up. So Romney, go ahead and take care of that really quick. Okay, good. Done. You remember that Sonic the Hedgehog film that we bring up every now and again and that we're thoroughly convinced isn't going to happen, and Romney kind of sits there and has an aneurysm on camera?
Well, I did before, but that was because, well, again, that was because there were some
That's because it
rumors
took us off guard.
Yeah.
So, but now it looks like this is actually going to be a thing, and it's actually slated for November 15th, 2019. So Paramount Pictures is going to be doing a Sonic the Hedgehog film. I believe it's going to be a mix of live action and CG. And currently we have Jeff Fowler making his directorial debut for the film, Tim Miller of the Deadpool film, and Toby Asher are executive producing with producer Neil Moritz of the Fast and the Furious franchise. How appropriate. And co-producers Dimitri Johnson and Dan Jevons. Yeah. This is happening, guys, and it's coming out next year. Thoughts?
Well,
I think my thoughts are still the same as when we first reported on this. Why does it need to be another arbitrary live-action CGI mix? Is it that scary to just do a pure animated movie?
yeah, honestly, that's what I'm with Alex. It worries me, like, what does having it mixed with live action actually add? Now, granted, and this just made...
I'm of the opinion of we should just not do this.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like, I may or may not have actually been working on a script, trying to find a way to make that idea work. I gave up on it after a while, but I actually did try writing a script that would be a live-action hybrid, but I ran into the same problem. It was, what does having it be live-action add that couldn't be done in animation? It's a case of why. I mean, and the other thing that worries me, because yes, animation has been able to blend with CG with live action fairly well. I mean, again, best example, the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy, probably the best use of it. But then that raises the question, are we going to get a creepy, hyper-realistic Andy Serkis version of Sonic? In which case, I don't think anyone wants that.
I'm more just expecting a movie like The Smurfs or whatever. It's like Sonic and Red suddenly find themselves on Earth and shenanigans happen.
So basically,
Smurfs.
or better example, so basically a live-action remake of Sonic X.
That too.
Because that's basically what Sonic X is, oh, suddenly they're on Earth.
And again, no.
I mean, the idea could
I have
work.
my own problems with Sonic X, and I'm not going to go into them here, but no.
Now,
It would look worse.
Like, the idea could work, depending on how you approach it. And again, this is probably me spitballing here, but if you try maybe enforcing an environmental message, a subtle environmental message, like what you got with Sonic Sat AM, where maybe you have it live action, but rather than trying to make it look like modern day, maybe have it look like kind of a rundown, make it look like something that used to be our Earth that is in live action, maybe that could work. I can maybe see a live action Robotnik. But that's a big maybe. They would have to get someone, they'd have to get a character actor who can actually pull it off. And that's the thing. I don't see them doing it.
The only alternative besides that, I really doubt they'd go for this just because I don't think they'd go this serious, is something akin to the Sonic 06 story For all
you
its
don't honestly see like Roger Craig Smith being brought in to do the voiceover for Sonic because he'll be a CG character in it.
Oh, I know they will. I'm sure they're gonna get the same voice cast for it. I guess. I don't know. They might just.
I mean, hey, if you want to bring in, I think it's I can't remember his name. I just barely did the Sonic Forces, got that going, and I can't remember the new Shadow voice.
Oh,
and he's pretty good. Kurt Thornton, yeah, I liked him.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're gonna. More than likely, I think they're gonna go for the same voice cast, and the humans might be celebrities, might not be. It really depends on what they're gonna do with the movie. But
this just in: Sonic the Hedgehog on Jimmy Kimmel.
Or alternately, this just in: Usain Bolt has a cameo in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie because you know that that's what they're gonna do.
The only way that I'm okay with this is if Uwe Boll somehow ends up in this movie only to get punched by Sonic. That's the only way this works.
Well, I didn't say Uwe Boll. I said Usain Bolt, the Jamaican.
No, I'm saying, and I know what you said, but I'm saying like the only way that I'm ever going to sign on to this thing is if you do something as outlandish as Sonic the Hedgehog coming out of nowhere, going to Germany and punching Uwe Boll in the face. That's the only way this works for me.
Yeah, we're giving people too much credit here. Let's face it.
We really are. That's why I'm saying no, don't do this. This shouldn't happen.
Well, at least to Sonic's credit, there's more to do than a Mario movie. I might add.
that is true. Because I mean, at the very least, Sonic has stuff there you can pull from. At least when it comes to the games, particularly with the Sonic Adventure 1, where they actually tried basing things on real locations. Like, there's something there you can use that could, if given to the right person, could work.
But to be perfectly honest, I honestly don't see Paramount looking at it that way. I'm thoroughly convinced that if they're going to do this, it's going to be its own original story.
Yeah, I'm convinced of that too. Like I said, I think it's just going to be another copy-paste movie of the Smurfs or other movies like this where the animation or Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Oh, look, we're going to put this hedgehog in a real-life atmosphere, and therefore shenanigans will happen. Yeah, that's how I see this going now.
Yeah, but at least the action scenes will make more sense with Sonic the Hedgehog than, say, the Smurfs.
And I can already see a sketch happening within the movie of like Sonic trying to eat a chili dog and therefore like 80% of the chili ending up on whatever celebrity is guiding him through the human world.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, alternately, for all we know, this could end up being like TMNT Out of the Shadows, where it could be like a case of, okay, we're expecting it to be bad, that it ends up being surprisingly decent but mediocre. It could end up being a case where maybe for all we know, it could be a warm body scenario where the people that give this to don't take it nearly as seriously and are just like, yeah, we know this concept is stupid. Let's just make fun of it.
Yeah, but even then, I think that's giving them way too much credit.
Yeah, a man can dream, though.
Yeah, we can dream, but then we can all be disappointed when it all happens, and then we. Yeah,
that's the problem with dreams. Eventually, you have to wake up.
Yep. So, final thoughts before we move on into the last story of the evening. And this one is kind of a doozy, if I do say so myself. All right, so let's go ahead and move it into the last story, which is that we've gotten confirmation that Hasbro is going to be taking over the toy license for the Power Rangers franchise. And as a couple to that, we also did get confirmation that Power Rangers has been renewed on Nickelodeon for a contract of up to 2021. And we already know since, what is it, Super Ninja Steel? Is that what it's called now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Super Ninja Steel is the current series. We now have our first peek into the 2019 series, which I'm going to go ahead and let Romney introduce because he's kind of our resident Sentai expert. And I have a feeling he'll enjoy bringing this to you guys.
All right. Well, and I'll be honest, having all these stories come out at the same time has kind of left me a bit confused, and it's actually led to a lot of rumors that are justifiably concerning. As the next Power Rangers season, because if you've been watching the Super Sentai series, you'll know that the current Sentai series that just barely concluded, Kyuranger, and basically you had two seasons people were hoping would be adapted. Zyuohger, which was basically an animal environmental themed series like Wild Force, and Kyuranger, which was a space themed series with the gimmick that the starting roster was 9 Rangers. And if you thought Now, here's what I thought when I first saw the title of the new season: Power Rangers Beast Morphers. So you're probably thinking, oh, well, they're adapting the environmental animal series. Nope. Instead of adapting either of the two newer Sentai seasons, they're instead going back and adapting the Sentai series that they skipped over in favor of Kyoryuger for Dino Charge, and that is the series Tokime Sentai Go Busters, which came out in 2012, which, to add even further to the confusion, was Toei's homage to Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And that's just where it begins with this confusion.
What's funny to me is, like, how many conversations did you and I have that's like, what would actually happen if they actually did go backwards and try to bring in some of these gaps? And now we've got it. Now it's happening.
Well, and that's what led to one particular rumor, and it's something that kind of got fuel added to it, considering that Saban Brands, the company that produces Power Rangers, is cutting its ties with Bandai America, which were the ones initially producing the toys, and has ties to Bandai Japan, the company that actually finances the original Super Sentai series. What a lot of people are now thinking of, Hasbro is going to try to acquire the franchise because they're taking over the toy license, and rumor has it that they're looking to acquire the Power Rangers series and franchise as a whole. It's leading people to speculate, did Saban lose the rights to the Super Sentai series? And naturally, that has a lot of interesting ramifications if that is true.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely something that's kind of had a lot of people questioning as to whether or not Haim Saban is actually in charge anymore. But I don't know.
Yeah. And so to kind of go with the lighter side, let's go with what we do know. The new season, and I'm going to pull up the image of the Go Buster suits that the Gizmodo article has shown us. It's a publicity still from Go Buster.
Give me a second and I can do that for you.
I've got it. So here are the suits from Go Buster, and those are the suits for the new Power Rangers season. Now, Go Busters was a spy, kind of technologically based series, so it naturally would work well as a Power Rangers series, and it looks like they are going to copy the plot line from Go Buster, although it's weird considering that they took ideas from Go Buster for Dino Charge, but again, that's the nature of the game, adapting and trying to adapt what you can. And so, with Beast Morphers, with what the idea of the series is, which is basically people who were involved in some weird disaster, having to fight against monsters that emerged from that disaster years later. It's pretty straightforward, but looking at this, it's one of those cases of, okay, they skipped this because it didn't do well in Japan. The fact that they're going back now, what's going on between Toei and Saban? And so we know that Beast Morphers is based on Go Busters, the 2012 series, and we know Hasbro is taking over the production of the toys going forward starting April 1st, 2019. Mm-hmm. And so this raises the question of what is going to happen to Power Rangers going forward, because the contract with Bandai ends on April 1st, 2019. So they're going to team up for the 25th anniversary, but then once that's done, that's it. So that's what we know. We know Hasbro is taking over, and they are going to be producing the toys, games, and role-play items for the Power Rangers franchise starting April 1st, 2019.
Which I know that this is going to be a little bit weird for me to say, but the thought that they're actually thinking about bringing some Power Rangers games back, I will at least admit has my curiosity for that. Okay, because Power Rangers is one of those properties that it pretty much writes itself for a video game. Okay, we've actually had some really good outings with it, including. And I'm really sad that this game did not get as much acclamation as it did over 2017. Power Rangers Mega Battle, which came out just before the movie and was kind of a promotional tool for it. I really do wish that had gotten a little bit more acclaim for what it tried to do. So I will admit that this is interesting for me from a gaming standpoint, that since Hasbro has done it in the past, they might try and take this on again. Or has done this with other properties and done games for them in the past. They could do this here, but the rest of it is shocking, kind of alarming. I will admit, like having somebody other than Bandai making the Power Ranger stuff, that's weird.
Yeah, especially considering and that's what makes it so confusing and why people are freaking out is because, okay, well, what does this do to the arrangement Saban has with Toei, the company that produces the Super Sentai series? Are they still allowed to produce adaptations of the Sentai series?
Yeah.
Or is Toei going in its own direction and Saban going in their own direction? Because given that the Super Sentai series, the series that Power Rangers pulls its footage from, is mostly owned by Bandai because Bandai makes the props, they design the toys, they design the costumes. They're basically the company that are the reason for the show to exist. And so you now have one toy company making a show that then gets adapted by another, that gets made by one company, given to another company, and the toys are then going to be made by their direct competitor. Now,
yeah, it definitely makes you ask questions because at this point, like one of the biggest reasons that Power Rangers is able to thrive is the fact that that you actually do have Bandai and Toei making Super Sentai. And so at that point, you can just bring the Sentai footage over and not have to worry about a majority of your film costs. Like they're the ones making the props. They're the ones making all of this stuff. Now it's like questionable. It's like, are you going to make your own? Are we actually going to have like US made Power Rangers? I don't even think we have the budget to do that.
Well, I mean, they've tried it before. I mean, not even just with some of the other Toku series. I mean, the closest we got was stuff like Mystic Knights of Tirnanog was an attempt by Saban to create their own tokusatsu franchise, which had middling success mainly because of clashes between Renaissance Pictures and Bandai. But then it's also raises the question, because if Hasbro's looking to purchase Power Rangers, the brand, so the TV series, the merchandise, all of it, it's very much one of those cases of, okay, well, where do the rights, this is going to leave the rights in a very confusing place.
Very murky, yeah.
And it's very much a case of, is Bandai going to allow Toei to still license the show to Saban if the toys are being made by a competing company? Now, one thing to clarify, this is only for basically the US, Europe, basically the non-Asian territories, because Japan, Korea, China, Bandai is still going to have the foothold there because although in Korea and China the show is called Power Rangers, it's basically dubbed episodes of the Super Sentai series. So those territories, they're still going to get the Bandai products. It's basically those of us who get the westernized version. So North America, so Canada, Mexico, US, Europe.
It makes you wonder a lot of things, because it makes you wonder how, like you brought up the toys, you brought up future series and things like that. But the other things that come to my mind is like, how does this affect the efforts of companies like Shout Factory, who are working their butts off to be able to bring past Sentai here so that we can actually enjoy them for the first time? How does this affect, say, Lionsgate, if, say, they wanted to do a sequel to the Power Rangers movie? Like, does this affect them? Does this affect, obviously it affects their toy distributor, but does this affect like who they work with and the stories that they're trying to create there? We don't know a lot of these various aspects.
Yeah, like with the movie specifically, it probably won't be affected nearly as much. Most we would see is maybe a change in distributor, but even then, the movies, they don't use any content from the Super Sentai series. The suits are American designed, so the movies are fine. It's the TV show that is caught in the crossfire here because it is literally using footage from a pre-existing TV show. So the TV series is kind of going to be put in an interesting position, as well as basically other media that has to borrow from any new Sentai series. Because I know Saban, and so with Shout Factory, Saban has a deal where they do have the rights to the past Sentai series. So with those Shout Factory releases, they're probably grandfathered into the arrangement that Saban was able to broker between Shout Factory and Toei, since he basically was the person who opened the door. Toei, and although they are a partial distributor, that's probably not going to be affected. It'll probably just be to the point where if Saban has lost the rights to the Super Sentai series, they probably would be allowed to distribute the Sentai series up until the last season Saban has the rights for. And that would probably be the cutoff point, because knowing Toei and knowing Saban, how prone they are to suing people for having ideas that are only vaguely similar to Power Rangers, if Toei tried to work with Shout Factory to release anything beyond that, they would probably have a problem.
So clarify this for me really quick before we get to Alex's opinion. They say that they only have it up until the 25th anniversary. Would that be Super Ninja Steel, or would that be Beast Morphers that they would have the 25th anniversary?
That's an interesting question.
Because I thought the 25th was like Super Dino Charge.
And that's the other confusing thing, because with anniversaries, it's always been tricky as to when they actually celebrate it.
Yeah.
And there is an event campaign that is upcoming that Saban is producing. They've made some announcements with like the re-releases of certain toys. You've got the Shattered Grid upcoming comic event between the two Power Rangers comic series. And so it's very much one of those cases where, okay, the tie-in, the arrangements they have probably include the upcoming 25th anniversary because it's grandfathered in. But other than that, it's very... Okay, I actually have the list here. So there's an appearance at the Licensing Expo. There's some touring live events. There's the Shattered Grid comic event, a detailed visual history book. And apparently Super Ninja Steel is part of that 25th anniversary, along with an upcoming 25th anniversary TV special. And so it looks like Super Ninja Steel may very well be kind of the last collaboration between Saban Brands and Bandai America.
All right. So, Alex, your take on this whole thing, because now we have a new toy distributor for Power Rangers. Now we have, we're getting the contract renewed, but now it looks like, yeah, kind of like Saban is losing its involvement again with Power Rangers. What's your take on this, man?
I don't know if that's for sure. If Saban's actually losing anything, a lot of this did go over my head a bit, but right now we just know that Hasbro is getting the license for the toy branding, and it really wouldn't surprise me if it's just a split licensing thing between the two different countries. Bandai will still handle most of the stuff outside of America. Hasbro will just primarily be in the United States, is the way I see it, maybe other territories too. And, well, of course, Adam, and you and I, before the show, we also talked a little bit about Bandai Namco's restructuring that they're doing this year. That also includes their toy division. So this might be as a bit of a result of that, might not be related at all. We don't know because there's nothing on that.
It's definitely too soon to call.
Yeah. So really, I guess we'll wait and see. I don't see why all of a sudden Saban would be losing the branding just because they're switching. They're just doing some change-ups in the merchandising rights. Obviously, Bandai's been a long time major sponsor of this show, of Super Sentai, and of course of America, but I don't know. I just think it's more likely it's a split licensing deal that Bandai's just I don't know, handing the reins over to Hasbro for some reason or another, and Saban's just in on the action here.
Yeah, and looking in the article, it does go into a little bit more detail where apparently a lot of this licensing agreement comes from the fact that the person, I'm looking up the specific name here, but basically the Hasbro chairman and CEO, Brian Goldner, is actually a longtime friend of Hayam Saban, the person who created Power Rangers, because he initially worked with Bandai America managing the Power Rangers brand. And so it could very well be a case of this is why Hasbro is acquiring the toy license and will probably make a move later to acquire the franchise, is because of that friendship between Goldner and Saban.
Yep. All right. Well, there's so much uncertain about this that I don't really know if we can go too much further into it. Plus, we're running out of time tonight. So final thoughts on this before we wrap things up for the evening.
It's definitely a drastic change. For all we know, we could be speculating over nothing. Yeah. But it's very much one of those things where we'll have to wait and see what is going to happen with Power Rangers going into 2019, since that's when the changes will go into effect.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this interesting journey, especially since we just barely launched our brand spanking new Discord server. So you guys can look into the chat for information on that. But if people want to get a hold of us to ask us on Twitter or on our other social media or on our YouTube channels, check those out. Just for the various things we've talked about tonight. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how did they get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel, and of course I do anime content. And speaking of that, and speaking of award shows, February the 24th, which is tomorrow, of the live stream, maybe soon later after that, than whenever you hear the recorded version on SoundCloud, whatnot. But yes, the 24th is Crunchyroll's Anime Awards. and I'll be giving my reactions to that as that happens. So tune in for that or follow that. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to go about that, but that's going to be a thing. And follow me on social media at AlexJShort on Twitter.
All right. And Stephen Romney, how do they follow you?
Well, you can always find me under the username Studio Ghost Utah. That is my username both on Facebook and on YouTube, and I'm also on Twitter at Romney Reviews. Unfortunately, because of how much of a nightmare this week was, I don't actually have a Romney's recommendation. I mean, the main major change that has occurred is that I recently got a Samsung Galaxy Note 8, but given that this thing costs a lot of money, I can't really recommend, the Galaxy Note 8, because it cost me an arm and a leg for this, and I don't want to recommend something that most of our listeners can't actually afford. So, yeah.
Last week's recommendation. That's what works.
Yeah, what was last week's recommendation?
It was a video for...
the Keef Crew.
The Keef Crew one. Yeah, I've watched that, by the way. It's hilarious.
Yes, and so, we'll copy that, because he's got some other really funny videos, like here's another one, I guess, from the same channel. If Smash Players had a sitcom, there's a recommendation.
Now I want to see that, too. All right, and if you guys want to follow me, you can do so. Obviously, you're on my YouTube channel, which is Drac2326. You guys can check out my content and give me a thumbs up or give me what you think about it. I actually find it appropriate that one of the things that gets recommended in my channel feed right now, at least for me, is my Sonic Forces review, which has had a little bit of controversy surrounding it, including the fact that some random a-hole with 5 subscribers decided to block it worldwide. And he had that for a grand total of 24 hours. I just barely got that back up. So you guys can check out that one and see whether or not you agree with me on my viewpoints on Sonic Forces. I can already tell you the Shadow Blazer does not. So that's the way things go. So you guys can follow my YouTube channel, Drac2326. You can also follow me on Twitter at Drac2326 and check out all of the other content that I do, because I do a lot of advertising for my podcasts as well as for my YouTube content, all of that fun stuff. And if you want to follow the podcast directly, first of all, we would highly recommend, please support our RSS feed, which would be geekyweek.podomatic.com. You can find us available on iTunes as well as Google Play for, I was about to say Amazon users, and I always make this problem, Android users. You guys can find us on Google Play, and that's the best way to be able to support the podcast is support the RSS feed, download the episodes, all that fun stuff for us. You can also support us on social media under the exact same title of Geeky NRO. So you can follow that on Twitter and on Facebook and be able to get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, stuff we'll be talking about, discussions we might have internally, all of that fun stuff. And also, I did forget to mention, you can also follow me at DracLP on Facebook for all the updates to my channel. And then also, if you want to submit stories, which we actually do have some listener stories tonight, or submit some feedback for the podcast, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And finally, you can now go to our own Discord server by searching Discord for GNRO, or if you want to reach out to me via direct message on Twitter or something like that to get an invite, I will make sure to be able to do that for you guys. Because we would be more than happy to have you guys. The Discord server is going to be mainly for the stuff that we do, but we would also be able to love to feature some smaller YouTubers that are looking to get their content out there somewhere. There isn't technically any rules right now for the Discord server aside from the golden rule. Treat people as you would like to be treated on that server until I actually put out official rules on paper so you guys can have that. Until then, if you act like an a-hole, you're probably going to get removed. I'm just going to be honest with that right off the bat. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this podcast. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support us. We love you guys dearly. And for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we will be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.